Have you ever spent hours worrying about what people think of you? Have you ever replayed a conversation in your mind 100 times, wondering if you said the wrong thing? Have you ever stopped yourself from chasing a dream because you feared criticism, rejection, or judgment? If your answer is yes, then listen carefully, because there is one truth that most people spend their entire lives trying to avoid. A truth so simple, yet so liberating. A truth that can instantly remove half of your anxiety. Here it is. Nobody cares about you as much as you think they do, and strangely enough, that is one of the most beautiful truths you will ever discover. At first, it sounds harsh. It sounds cold. It sounds depressing. But the Stoics understood something that modern society constantly forgets. People are too busy, worrying about themselves to spend much time worrying about you. The person you think is judging your appearance is worried about their own appearance. The person whose approval you desperately seek is busy seeking approval from someone else. The person you envy is secretly fighting battles you cannot see. Everyone is trapped inside their own minds. Everyone is carrying invisible burdens. Everyone is focused on their own fears, ambitions, insecurities, and struggles. And once you understand this truth, a tremendous weight falls from your shoulders. You stop performing. You stop pretending. You stop living for an audience that was never watching in the first place. This realization can transform your entire life, because the moment you stop obsessing over what others think, you finally become free to focus on what truly matters. Your growth, your purpose, your peace, your character, your life. Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic emperor, ruled the most powerful empire in the world, yet even he faced criticism. People insulted him, questioned him, doubted him, misunderstood him. But Marcus learned something profound. He wrote, "I have often wondered how it is that every man loves himself more than all the rest of men, yet sets less value on his own opinion of himself than on the opinion of others." Think about that. Why? Do we give strangers so much power? Why do we hand over the steering wheel of our lives to people who are not living our lives? Why do we sacrifice our dreams because someone might laugh? Why do we abandon our truth because someone might disagree? The Stoics believed this was one of humanity's greatest mistakes, because the opinions of others are outside your control, and anything outside your control should never become the foundation of your happiness. Imagine a man standing in the middle of a storm. The wind changes direction every minute. One moment it blows east. The next moment it blows west. If he tries to control the wind, he will go mad. But if he learns to adjust his sails instead, he can move forward regardless of the weather. People's opinions are the wind. Your character is the sail. Focus on the sail. Forget the wind. Most people never learn this lesson. Instead, they spend their lives trapped in an invisible prison. A prison built from other people's expectations. They choose careers they hate. They stay in relationships that drain them. They suppress their true personalities. They hide their dreams. They silence their voices, all because they fear judgment. But judgment is unavoidable. No matter what you do, someone will criticize you. If you speak, someone will dislike your words. If you stay silent, someone will question your silence. If you succeed, someone will envy you. If you fail, someone will mock you. You cannot escape criticism. Therefore, the Stoics argued, you must stop trying. You must stop seeking universal approval, because it does not exist, it never has, and it never will. Imagine two men. The first man spends his entire life trying to please everyone. The second man spends his life trying to become the best version of himself. At the end of their lives, who wins? The first man is exhausted. The second man is fulfilled. Because the first man lived for others. The second man lived according to principles, and principles always outlast opinions. The truth is that life becomes much easier when you stop asking, "What do people think of me?" and start asking, "What do I think of myself?" That single shift changes everything. Because self-respect is more valuable than popularity. Character is more valuable than reputation. Purpose is more valuable than approval, and inner peace is more valuable than applause. Most people are addicted to applause. They want validation, likes, attention, recognition, praise. They constantly seek evidence that they matter. But the Stoics taught that a person who depends on external validation becomes a slave, because their happiness depends on things they cannot control. The crowd can cheer today and ignore you tomorrow. The crowd can love you today and hate you next week. The crowd is unstable. Your character should not be. Epictetus once taught that if you desire things outside your control, suffering becomes inevitable. And what is public approval, if not one of the most uncontrollable things on earth? You cannot force people to admire you. You cannot force people to understand you. You cannot force people to respect you. But you can control how you respond. You can control your effort. You can control your actions. You can control your integrity. You can control your mindset. That is where real power lives, not in the opinions of others, but in mastery of yourself. Think back to every moment you felt embarrassed, every awkward interaction, every mistake, every failure. How many of those moments do other people still remember? Very few, maybe none, because they were too busy thinking about their own mistakes, their own embarrassments, their own fears. Psychologists call this the spotlight effect. We imagine a giant spotlight shining on us. We believe everyone notices every flaw, every mistake, every imperfection. But the spotlight exists mostly in our imagination. In reality, people are focused on themselves, and once you truly understand this, something incredible happens. You become fearless, not because fear disappears, but because you realize the audience you feared never really existed. The prison door was never locked. You were simply holding it closed yourself. The Stoics wanted people to wake up from this illusion. They wanted individuals to stop chasing approval and start pursuing excellence, because excellence creates meaning, approval creates dependency, and dependency creates suffering. The world does not owe you attention. The world does not owe you praise. The world does not owe you recognition. And strangely enough, that realization is empowering, because if nobody owes you anything, then you owe yourself everything. You owe yourself discipline. You owe yourself courage. You owe yourself growth. You owe yourself honesty. You owe yourself effort. And most importantly, you owe yourself a life that is truly yours. Not a life designed to impress others. Not a life built around appearances. Not a life dictated by social expectations, but a life aligned with your values, your purpose, your principles, your truth. Many people reach old age carrying a terrible regret. Not that they failed, not that they lost, not that they struggled, but that they never truly lived. They spent decades acting, performing, pretending, trying to become the person others wanted them to be, and in the process, they lost themselves. The Stoics warned against this tragedy, because time is precious. Every day that passes is a day you never get back. Every hour spent seeking approval is an hour stolen from your growth. Every moment spent worrying about judgment is a moment taken away from your purpose. Life is too short for that. Far too short. One day, everyone who criticized you will be gone. One day, everyone who doubted you will be gone. One day, everyone who praised you will be gone. And one day, you will be gone too. Marcus Aurelius reflected on this often, not to become depressed, but to gain perspective. He understood that fame fades, reputation fades, public opinion fades, everything fades. So why sacrifice your peace for something so temporary? Why build your identity upon the opinions of people who are themselves temporary? Instead, build yourself upon something stronger. Virtue, wisdom, discipline, courage, integrity. These things endure. These things matter. These things remain valuable even when nobody is watching. And that is the true Stoic test. Who are you when nobody is watching? Who are you when there is no applause? Who, Are you when there is no audience? Because that person is the real you. Not the image, not the mask, not the performance. The real you. And that is the person worth developing, the person worth investing in, the person worth becoming. So today, stop chasing attention. Stop chasing validation. Stop chasing approval. Instead, focus on building yourself. Focus on mastering your mind. Focus on strengthening your character. Focus on living according to your values, because nobody is thinking about you as much as you imagine. And that is not bad news. It is freedom. Freedom to fail. Freedom to learn. Freedom to grow. Freedom to take risks. Freedom to become who you were meant to be. And once you embrace this freedom, your entire life begins to change, because the moment you stop living for the crowd, you finally begin living for yourself. Imagine a young man standing at the edge of a great ocean. In his heart burns a dream. He wants to sail beyond the horizon. He wants to discover new lands. He wants to become something greater than he is today. But before he takes a single step toward the water, he turns around and asks the crowd behind him, "Do you think I should go?" Some say yes. Others say no. Some laugh, some criticize. Some warn him of failure, some tell him he is not ready, and because the voices are divided, he hesitates. Days become weeks, weeks become months, months become years. The ocean remains before him, the dream remains inside him, but he never leaves the shore. Not because he lacked ability, not because he lacked opportunity, but because he gave strangers authority over his destiny. This is how most people live. Not physically standing on a beach, but mentally standing at the edge of their potential. Waiting for permission, waiting for approval, waiting for validation, waiting for someone to tell them they are good enough. And while they wait, life passes them by. The Stoics understood a painful truth. The need for validation is one of the greatest obstacles to personal freedom. Because the moment your confidence depends on other people, your power belongs to them. You become emotionally controlled by forces outside yourself. If people praise you, you feel valuable. If people criticize you, you feel worthless. If people approve of you, you feel confident. If people reject you, you feel broken. Your emotional state becomes a puppet attached to countless strings, and every person around you holds a piece of those strings. This is not freedom. This is slavery. Epictetus spoke about this thousands of years ago. Born as a slave, he understood freedom better than most free men. He taught that true freedom comes from controlling what is within yourself and releasing what is not. Think about that. A slave became one of history's greatest teachers of freedom, because he realized that chains on the body are not as dangerous as chains on the mind, and validation is one of the strongest mental chains a person can wear. Many people spend their entire lives chasing acceptance. As children, they seek approval from parents. As teenagers, they seek approval from friends. As adults, they seek approval from society. And even in old age, they continue seeking approval from everyone around them. The faces change. The addiction remains. The tragedy is that validation never truly satisfies. It feels good for a moment. A compliment, a promotion, a social media like, a round of applause. For a few seconds you feel important. Then the feeling fades, and immediately your mind starts searching for the next dose, more praise, more attention, more recognition, more approval. It becomes an endless cycle, like drinking salt water when thirsty. The more you consume, the thirstier you become. The Stoics knew that happiness built on external validation is unstable, because external things are unstable. Today, people admire you. Tomorrow, they forget you. Today, people praise you. Tomorrow, they criticize you. Today, people support you. Tomorrow, they oppose you. Human opinion changes like weather. Building your self-worth upon it is like building a house on sand. Eventually, everything collapses. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. Despite being emperor of Rome, he constantly reminded himself not to seek public approval. Think about that. He ruled millions of people. He commanded armies. He possessed immense power. Yet he still warned himself against becoming dependent on praise, because he knew something most people never learn. The crowd cannot tell you who you are. Only your actions can. Only your character can. Only your principles can. The opinions of others are merely echoes. And echoes should never become your compass. Imagine carrying a mirror everywhere you go. Every few seconds you look into it. You check your reflection. You adjust your appearance. You make sure everything looks perfect. Now imagine carrying not one mirror, but 1,000 mirrors. Each mirror belongs to another person. One mirror shows admiration, another shows criticism, another shows envy, another shows disappointment, another shows approval, another shows hatred. Soon you become obsessed with managing every reflection. You spend so much time watching yourself through other people's eyes that you forget who you actually are. This is what happens when validation becomes your identity. You lose yourself. You stop asking, "What do I believe?" and start asking, "What will people think?" You stop asking, "What is right?" and start asking, "What is popular?" You stop asking, "What's do I truly want?" and start asking, "What will impress others?" Slowly, your authentic self disappears. Not all at once, but piece by piece, decision by decision, compromise by compromise, until one day you wake up and realize you have built an entire life around other people's expectations, and yet you still feel empty. Because approval can fill your ego, but it cannot fill your soul. The soul requires something deeper. Meaning, purpose, growth, virtue. These things cannot be given by others. They must be cultivated within. There is a powerful story about a sculptor. Every day he worked on a magnificent statue. Years passed. Thousands of hours were invested. His masterpiece slowly emerged from stone. One day, someone asked him, "Why do you spend so much effort perfecting details that nobody will ever see?" The sculptor smiled and replied, "Because I will know." That answer contains profound wisdom. Most people only work hard when others are watching. The Stoics worked hard even when nobody was watching. Most people seek recognition. The Stoics sought excellence. Most people focused on appearance. The Stoics focused on character. Because character remains when applause disappears. Imagine two athletes. The first trains only when cameras are present. The second trains regardless of who is watching. Who becomes stronger? Who becomes greater? Who reaches mastery? The answer is obvious. Real growth happens in private. Real discipline develops in silence. Real strength is built when nobody is there to reward you. Validation focuses your attention outward. Excellence focuses your attention inward. And that difference changes everything. Many people are terrified of failure because they fear embarrassment. But embarrassment is merely the fear of judgment. And judgment only has power if you grant it power. Think about every great achievement in human history, every invention, every discovery, every breakthrough, every masterpiece. At some point, someone was criticized for pursuing it. People laughed at dreamers. People doubted visionaries. People mocked innovators. Yet those individuals continued anyway. Why? Because they valued their purpose more than public approval. Imagine if they had waited for universal support. Imagine if they had stopped at the first criticism. Imagine if they had allowed fear of judgment to control them. The world would have lost countless achievements, and the same principle applies to your life. There is something inside you that wants to grow, a dream, a goal, a vision, a calling. Perhaps you have ignored it for years. Perhaps fear has kept it buried. Perhaps you are waiting for permission. If so, listen carefully. Nobody is coming. Nobody is going to magically arrive and declare, "You are finally worthy. You are finally ready. You finally have permission." The Stoics would tell you that permission is self-granted. Courage is self-created. Action is self-chosen. Your life begins changing the moment you stop waiting for validation and start moving forward despite uncertainty. Because confidence is not built before action. Confidence is built through action. This is one of the biggest misconceptions people have. They think confident people act because they feel confident. The truth is often the opposite. Confident people become confident because they act. They move despite fear. They speak despite nervousness. They try despite uncertainty. They fail. They learn. They improve. And eventually confidence emerges, not from approval, but from experience. Every time you rely on validation, you weaken yourself. Every time you rely on your own principles, you strengthen yourself. The choice seems small, but over years, it creates completely different lives. One person becomes dependent on approval. The other becomes grounded in self-respect. One becomes reactive. The other becomes resilient. One becomes controlled by public opinion. The other becomes guided by inner conviction. Which life would you choose? The Stoics believed that peace begins when you stop outsourcing your worth. Your worth is not determined by likes, not determined by popularity, not determined by status, not determined by followers, not determined by praise. Your worth comes from how you live, how you think, how you act, how you treat others, how you respond to adversity, how faithfully you live according to your values. That is where true self-respect is born, and self-respect is infinitely more valuable than validation. Validation can disappear overnight. Self-respect remains. Validation depends on others. Self-respect depends on you. Validation is fragile. Self-respect is strong. Validation creates anxiety. Self-respect creates peace. The moment you understand this, your priorities begin to shift. You stop trying to impress people. You start trying to improve yourself. You stop chasing attention. You start chasing growth. You stop seeking approval. You start seeking wisdom. And slowly your life transforms, because the energy once wasted on pleasing others becomes available for building yourself. Imagine how powerful you would become if you redirected every ounce of approval seeking into self-development. Every hour spent worrying about judgment becomes an hour of learning. Every moment spent seeking attention becomes a moment of growth. Every ounce of fear becomes fuel for progress. This is the Stoic path, not the path of popularity, not the path of applause, not the path of validation, but the path of inner mastery, the path of freedom. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine walking through a crowded city. Thousands of people pass by you. Some are rushing to work, some are staring at their phones, some are smiling, some look exhausted, some appear confident, some seem completely lost. At first glance, they are just strangers. But if you could step inside their minds for only a few seconds, you would discover something extraordinary. Every single person is carrying a private universe of worries, hopes, fears, regrets, and dreams. The businessman walking confidently down the street may be terrified of losing everything he built. The young woman laughing with friends may be secretly struggling with loneliness. The elderly man sitting quietly on a bench may be thinking about loved ones he has lost. The student who looks calm may be overwhelmed by anxiety about the future. Everyone is fighting a battle you cannot see, and that battle occupies far more of their attention than you ever will. This is one of the most liberating truths in Stoic philosophy. The reality is that people spend far less time thinking about you than you imagine, not because they are cruel, not because they are selfish, but because they are human. Their minds are already full of responsibilities, full of insecurities, full of problems, full of desires, full of fears. Most people are so busy carrying the weight of their own lives that they barely have energy left to analyze yours. Yet we constantly imagine the opposite. We walk into a room and think everyone notices us. We make a mistake and believe everyone remembers it. We say something awkward and assume everyone is talking about it afterward. But the truth is usually much simpler. People move on because they are focused on themselves. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology gave it a name. Today, psychologists call it the spotlight effect, the tendency to believe we are being observed and judged much more than we actually are. Imagine standing on a stage beneath a giant spotlight. You feel exposed. Every movement seems visible. Every flaw seems magnified. Every mistake feels enormous. Now imagine stepping off the stage and realizing the spotlight was never there. The audience you feared was mostly occupied with their own concerns. That realization changes everything. because much of human anxiety is built upon an illusion. An illusion that says, everyone is watching me, but they are not. Most people are watching themselves. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself of this constantly. As emperor, he was surrounded by politics, criticism, and endless public scrutiny, yet he observed something profound. The people who praised him today would soon forget him. The people who criticized him today would eventually disappear. Entire generations would come and go, and life would continue. This understanding gave him peace, because it revealed how temporary public opinion really is. Think about your own life. Remember that embarrassing moment from years ago, the one that still occasionally appears in your mind late at night. Maybe you stumbled while speaking. Maybe you made a foolish mistake. Maybe you said something you regret. Maybe you failed publicly. Now ask yourself a question. How many people still remember it? Very few. Perhaps nobody at all. Yet you carried that memory for years. Not because others were holding on to it, but because you were. The prison existed inside your own mind. This is why Stoicism places such importance on perception. Events themselves are rarely the source of suffering. Our interpretation of those events creates suffering. Two people can experience the same criticism. One becomes devastated. The other remains calm. What changed? Not the criticism. The perception. One person believes the criticism defines them. The other understands it is merely an opinion. One person hands away their power. The other keeps it. The difference is everything. Imagine a man carrying a backpack filled with stones. Every insult becomes a stone. Every rejection becomes a stone. Every failure becomes a stone. Every criticism becomes a stone. Year after year, the backpack grows heavier. Eventually, he becomes exhausted, not because life is impossible, but because he refuses to put the stones down. Most people do this emotionally. They collect judgments, they collect regrets, they collect opinions, they collect memories of rejection, and then they wonder why they feel burdened. The Stoics taught something radical. You do not have to carry every stone. You can choose what deserves your attention. You can choose what deserves your energy. You can choose what deserves space in your mind. Not every opinion matters. Not every criticism deserves consideration. Not every judgment deserves a response. And not every person deserves influence over your peace. One of the greatest skills you can develop is selective attention, the ability to decide what enters your mind and what does not, because your attention is your life. Where attention goes, energy flows. And where energy flows, your future is built. If your attention constantly focuses on what others think, your life becomes controlled by others. If your attention focuses on growth, purpose, and virtue, your life becomes controlled by you. The choice is yours. Consider a battlefield. Thousands of arrows are flying through the air. A wise warrior does not chase every arrow. He focuses on the direction he must travel. Likewise, life constantly throws opinions at you. Praise, criticism, approval, rejection, judgment, rumors, gossip, expectations. If you chase every arrow, you will never move forward. You will spend your entire life reacting instead of living. This is why Stoics practiced emotional discipline, not because they lacked feelings, not because they were cold, but because they understood something most people never realize. Your peace is too valuable to be handed away so easily. Imagine waking up each morning and giving a stranger complete control over your emotions. If they compliment you, you feel happy. If they insult you, you feel miserable. If they approve of you, you feel worthy. If they reject you, you feel broken. Most people would recognize this arrangement as absurd, yet many live exactly this way, every single day. Their emotional state depends entirely on external reactions. Their happiness depends on public opinion. Their confidence depends on validation. Their peace depends on circumstances. The Stoics rejected this way of living. They believed true strength comes from internal stability, a stability that remains even when criticism arrives, a stability that survives rejection, a stability that does not crumble when applause disappears, because life is unpredictable. People are unpredictable. Opinions are unpredictable. Only your character can provide lasting stability. There is an ancient story about a king who wanted to understand happiness. He searched everywhere. He consulted philosophers. He questioned scholars. He sought advice from wise men across his kingdom. Finally, an old sage told him, "Happiness belongs to the person who governs himself." The king was confused. He expected a more complicated answer. But the sage continued, "A man who governs nations but cannot govern his own mind is still a slave." That lesson remains true today. Many people control businesses, control teams, control families, control wealth, yet remain completely controlled by other people's opinions. Their external life appears powerful. Their internal life remains fragile. The Stoics aimed for the opposite. Internal strength first, external success second, because external success without inner peace is merely a beautiful prison, and inner peace without external success is still peace. This understanding changes how you view the world. You stop taking everything personally. You realize that most criticism says more about the critic than about you. You realize that most judgments come from personal insecurities. You realize that many harsh words originate from hidden pain. People project their struggles onto others. The angry person spreads anger. The insecure person spreads criticism. The fearful person spreads doubt. The bitter person spreads bitterness. And once you understand this, compassion becomes easier. You stop viewing every negative interaction as a personal attack. You start seeing it as evidence of someone else's struggle. This does not mean accepting abuse. It does not mean tolerating disrespect. It simply means understanding reality. Everyone is carrying something. Everyone is fighting something. Everyone is trying to survive something, including you, including the people you fear, including the people whose opinions keep you awake at night. The person judging you is also worried about being judged. The person criticizing you is also insecure about something. The person rejecting you has their own fears. The person who seems confident has private doubts. No one escapes the human condition. No one. This realization can fill you with extraordinary freedom. Because once you understand that everyone is occupied by their own battles, you stop imagining yourself as the center of everyone else's attention. And when that illusion disappears, courage appears. You become willing to speak, willing to act, willing to try, willing to fail, willing to grow. Because you finally understand that the consequences are rarely as catastrophic as your mind predicted. Most people will not remember. Most people will move on. Most people are focused on themselves, and that is okay. In fact, it is a gift, because it means you are free. Free to reinvent yourself. Free to take risks. Free to make mistakes. Free to start over. Free to pursue your purpose without carrying the impossible burden of universal approval. The Stoics believed that life becomes meaningful when your attention shifts from how you appear to others toward who you are becoming. That is where growth begins. That is where confidence begins. That is where freedom begins. Not in the eyes of the crowd, but in the quiet certainty that you are living according to your values, that you are improving each day. There comes a moment in every person's life when they must face one of the hardest truths of all. Not everyone will value you. Not everyone will appreciate you. Not everyone will choose you. And perhaps most painfully, not everyone will care about you the way you care about them. This truth hurts because human beings naturally desire connection. We want to be loved. We want to be accepted. We want to feel important to the people around us. There is nothing wrong with that. The problem begins when we become so desperate for someone's attention that we abandon ourselves in the process. Many people spend years chasing people who have already shown them who they are. They chase affection. They chase approval. They chase validation. They chase respect. They chase love. And with every step they take toward someone else, they move further away from themselves. The Stoics warned against this, not because relationships are unimportant, but because self-respect must never be sacrificed for acceptance. Imagine holding water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the faster the water escapes. Relationships often work the same way. The more desperately you cling, the more suffering you create. The more you chase, the more powerless you feel. The more you beg for attention, the less valuable your own attention becomes. And yet countless people live this way. Checking messages repeatedly, waiting for replies, overthinking every interaction, analyzing every word, obsessing over people who barely think about them. They give away their peace one notification at a time. They surrender their emotional stability to circumstances beyond their control. And slowly, without realizing it, they become prisoners of attachment. The Stoics believed attachment becomes dangerous when it destroys your inner freedom. Because the moment your happiness depends entirely on another person, you become vulnerable to constant suffering. You begin living in fear, fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of being ignored, fear of not being enough. But true confidence cannot exist where fear rules. True confidence is born from self-sufficiency, not isolation, not arrogance, but the understanding that your worth exists independently of anyone else's approval. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. As emperor, people constantly entered and exited his life. Allies became enemies. Friends disappeared. Supporters changed sides. Public opinion shifted endlessly. Yet he reminded himself again and again that external things are temporary. People come, people go, circumstances change. Nothing remains forever. Therefore, anchoring your happiness to another person's behavior is like anchoring a ship to a cloud. Eventually, it drifts away. And so do you. One of the most powerful lessons Stoicism teaches is this: when someone does not value you, let them go. Not with anger, not with bitterness, not with revenge, but with dignity, because dignity protects your peace. Imagine standing before a closed door. You knock once, no answer. You knock again, still nothing. You continue knocking for hours, days, months, years. Eventually your knuckles bleed, your energy disappears, your life passes by. Meanwhile, hundreds of other doors remain unopened around you. Doors of opportunity, doors of growth, doors of purpose, doors of new relationships, doors of self-discovery. Yet you remain trapped before the one door that refuses to open. This is what happens when people become obsessed with those who do not choose them. They waste years trying to force what was never meant to be. The Stoics would ask a simple question: why? Chase what is running away from you. Why beg for what should be freely given? Why sacrifice your peace for someone who does not recognize your value? The answer is often insecurity. Many people secretly believe that being chosen by others will finally make them worthy. They think, if this person loves me, then I am valuable. If this person accepts me, then I matter. If this person stays, then I am enough. But worth does not work that way. A diamond remains valuable even if nobody recognizes it. The sun remains powerful even when hidden by clouds, and you remain worthy regardless of who sees it. Your value is not created by someone else's attention. It already exists. The tragedy is that many people spend their lives trying to prove their worth to those who were never qualified to judge it. Think about how much energy is wasted chasing unavailable people. How many sleepless nights? How many anxious thoughts? How many emotional wounds? How many opportunities lost? All because someone decided their happiness depended on another person's response. The Stoics understood that emotional freedom begins with acceptance. Acceptance that some people will leave. Acceptance that some people will misunderstand you. Acceptance that some people will never appreciate your value. Acceptance that some relationships have expiration dates. This is not pessimism, it is reality. And reality, when accepted, becomes liberating. Because once you stop resisting reality, you stop suffering unnecessarily. You stop trying to control people. You stop trying to force affection. You stop trying to manufacture connection. Instead, you focus on what you can control. your character, your actions, your growth, your purpose, your peace. And something remarkable happens. The energy once spent chasing others becomes available for building yourself. You become stronger, calmer, wiser, more confident. Not because someone finally chose you, but because you finally chose yourself. This is where real transformation begins. Not when the world validates you, but when you validate yourself. Not when someone finally recognizes your worth, but when you recognize it first. Not when someone stays, but when you realize you can stand firmly even if they leave. There is tremendous power in knowing that your peace cannot be taken away by another person's absence. Because then you stop living from fear. You stop settling. You stop accepting disrespect. You stop begging for crumbs when you deserve a full meal. You begin setting standards. You begin protecting your energy. You begin valuing your time. You begin understanding that your life is too precious to spend it convincing others to care. People who truly value you will not require endless chasing. People who genuinely respect you will not require endless proving. People who belong in your life will make room for you, and those who do not, you must learn to release, not because they are bad, not because you hate them, but because your journey requires movement, and you cannot move forward while dragging chains from the past. The Stoics practiced voluntary detachment. They regularly reminded themselves that everything external could disappear. Not to become cold, not to become indifferent, but to become grateful and resilient. When you understand that nothing lasts forever, you begin appreciating what you have while it exists. You love deeply, but not desperately. You care genuinely, but not obsessively. You connect fully, but not dependently. This balance creates emotional strength, and emotional strength creates freedom, because freedom is not the absence of relationships. Freedom is the absence of emotional slavery. Freedom is knowing that you can love without losing yourself, give without emptying yourself, care without destroying yourself, and walk away when necessary without abandoning your dignity. That is true power, not controlling others, but controlling yourself, not forcing outcomes, but mastering responses, not demanding attention, but valuing your own attention enough to invest it wisely. And perhaps that is the ultimate lesson of this entire journey. Nobody cares about you as much as you think they do. At first, this sounds depressing, but now you can see why it is actually liberating. Because if nobody is constantly watching you, you are free to fail, free to learn, free to change, free to begin again. If nobody is spending all day judging you, you are free to pursue your dreams, free to take risks, free to speak your truth, free to live authentically. If people are mostly focused on their own lives, then you should be focused on yours, not in a selfish way, but in a purposeful way. The Stoics never taught selfishness. They taught responsibility. Responsibility for your thoughts, responsibility for your actions, responsibility for your character, responsibility for the limited time you have on this earth, because life is short, far shorter than most people realize. One day your fears will disappear. One day your critics will disappear. One day the people whose opinions once controlled you will disappear. And one day you too will leave this world. When that day comes, the question will not be, did everyone approve of me? The question will be, did I live according to my values? Did I use my time wisely? Did I become the person I was capable of becoming? Did I live courageously? Did I live truthfully? Did I live fully? That is what matters. Not applause, not popularity, not validation, but character, virtue, wisdom, courage, self-respect. These are the treasures no one can take from you. These are the foundations of a meaningful life. So from this day forward, stop chasing attention. Stop chasing approval. Stop chasing people who refuse to see your worth. Instead, focus on your life. Focus on your growth. Focus on your purpose. Focus on becoming stronger than yesterday. Let others think whatever they want. Let them judge. Let them misunderstand. Let them doubt. Their opinions do not define you. Your actions do. Your character does, your choices do. And if you dedicate yourself to becoming a better human being every day, then you have already won a victory far greater than popularity. You have won freedom. The freedom to live on your own terms. The freedom to walk your own path. The freedom to become who you were meant to be. And in the end, that freedom is worth more than all the approval in the world.